Hi, everyone. This is James Caleb Collins, and this is my final presentation for human security. So, for my final presentation, I decided to focus on Utqiagvik, which is formerly Barrow, Alaska. I didn't know the name had changed until I started researching it. Um, excuse me. So, also for this project, for Utqiagvik, sorry if I pronounce it wrong. I apologize. I focused my security on the town as well as uh, a group or a tribe, Native Alaskan tribe that lives in that community. I thought it would add a kind of a connection to the human security as a whole for what we've been learning. So I will be focusing on food security. So here we go. Wow. Okay. So Utqiagvik, Alaska, is located in the North Slope Borough. You can see here I have it. I don't have it. I have a map highlighted in red. It shows where it is. It's the far northern part of Alaska. So as I mentioned earlier, it's Utqiagvik is formerly known as Barrow, Alaska. It is the largest city in the North Slope Borough. It is an economic, transportation, and administrative center and is the northernmost community in the United States. So it is also known as place where snowy owls are hunted. And it was first incorporated as a first-class city in 1959. So it's actually a pretty modern city, all things considered. Most homes have natural gas, which are used to heat their homes. They no longer have to use well blubber. So, fun fact for you. And they have water and sewer connections and systems connected to their house that is run by the North Slope Borough. And moving on here, so the I guess the original people who lived in Utqiagvik, dating back to like 500 AD, I believe is what it was, were the Inupiat tribe. Um, so their name means real people. And if you've ever taken an anthropology class or archaeology class, you know that most tribes refer to themselves as first or just people. So that's not uncommon. And actually, 63% of the population in Utqiagvik are Inupiat people or part of the tribe. So that's really why I wanted to focus on them in this community because they make up such a large number of the members of this community. So they actually have a really good understanding of the area resources. To survive the cold and harsh climate, it was vital for them to understand the land's resources and what they could grow and what they couldn't grow and what they could eat and what they couldn't eat. In the 1800s, they had contact with the outside nation, like other I guess states and Canada and Russia, and they all came in contact with the Utqiagviks or the Inupiat people. They, I mean, they kind of changed their way of living. They introduced guns and introduced new hunting methods. They are very big into culture and food, which is why I am focusing on their food security. It is very important to them. It is very important to this community, to this town. Um, so they are very spiritual when it comes to food, cooking, hunting, and eating. The Inupiats believe the combination of animal and human blood is one's bloodstream creates a healthy body and soul. So food is very important to them. So let's see. Their diet is very high fat foods. They eat sea mammals like walrus, ringed seal, bearded seal. They eat narwhals. Beluga whales and bowhead whales are their favorite. They can also eat some kind of berries, that kind of grow in the Arctic, if you can find any. So they survive on very fatty foods. Okay, so what is food security? So, food security is the means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy lifestyle. Which we should all know what food security is. Okay, so the root causes of food insecurity for Utqiagvik. So I have climate change, infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, technological advances, the cost of living, and a kind of a change in social standards towards their food that they consume. All right. So the first one is climate change, and I'm doing this a bit differently. I'm gonna have you look at pictures, so enjoy. So climate change is a growing threat for Utqiagvik. I think Alaska is one of the fastest growing states for the temperature. I think it had an average rise of 3 degrees Fahrenheit on average. So it's actually having a huge impact on the way that people store food. It's causing the underground ice cellars to melt, even in the winter months. That's where these ice cellars are. They're dug deep into the permafrost, and they're framed with whalebone actually, and driftwood, and it's a year-round freezer. They use like a TP type structure to operate a pulley system to lower and grab the food that is kept down in the cellar. So, um, because of the climate change and the melting of the permafrost, it's causing an increased risk of potential food illness towards the Utqiagvik community, specifically the Inupiats. That's where they store their food, and if it's no longer cold, it can make the whale blubber, their seal, the walrus, whatever they have stored down in there, uh, to go bad. It's no longer cold or frozen. It's no longer sustainable to eat. Um, so that is a huge issue with climate change. So with the risk of losing the food, it's increasing the animals have. It's increasing the chance that the animals have grown more scarce, and the process of hunting them has become even more life threatening because of the melting ice. As you can see, I have a picture of where they're just jumping from. I, I don't really know what that is, but it looks like part of the ocean. So the ice is just melting. They're just standing on little tiny bits of ice. So that's a huge risk when they go out to hunt. In 2010, a survey was done that said that 20% of the homes experienced times without enough food. So that goes back to the scarcity of the animals that they can hunt. So without enough food, out of the homes reporting difficulty of obtaining food, 51% said they could not get sustenance food, so they couldn't eat what they were used to eating. So Morwell, narwhal, and seals and walrus. They could not eat that. Which is, if you look at this picture down here, this lady is, I believe that's seal she's cutting up. So seal blubber. So it looks very appetizing. So that's climate change is definitely affecting that. So how do you address climate change in Utqiagvik? So if you look here, this is an ice cellar. You can see the bottom of it. I don't know if my mouse will. Yeah, the bottom of it right here. There's a man. This is the actual original structure of the ice cellar. So to fix this from heating up and climate change affecting it, this structure up here will be added and have power to it. So there'll be solar energy, solar panels that will then keep this cool down here and keep the food at a temperature that is safe for consumption. These are pretty expensive to build. I mean, they're not cheap. So constructing these ice cellars, huts, they will have a controlled temperature and humidity for their food, and it's just gonna overall make the food healthier and safer to eat. And it's already you can just build it on top of the where you already have an existing ice cellar if the foundation is safe. You can also see they've added support systems because well bones and driftwood probably isn't the best to support a structure with this magnitude. So moving on, we have infrastructure. Oh, I almost thought that didn't work. So for infrastructure, this is an issue for Utqiagvik because sorry, sorry about the dog. So isolation causes infrastructure concerns. Utqiagvik, sorry, is not connected by road to the rest of Alaska. I mean, there are roads, but it's like major highways. The cost of goods is more expensive due to the lack of access in the way of transportation of food is done mainly by airplane. So mainly there's two hubs. There's Anchorage and Fairbanks that fly into Utqiagvik, and that's all. That's the main infrastructure. So there's an issue with not enough roads. You have the upkeep of the airports. And if you look at this bottom right picture, that's actually a ice cellar that collapsed. So I included that into the infrastructure discussion because it's just going back to global warming or climate change, excuse me. It is affecting the infrastructure of the Utqiagvik area. And so basically, like the ice cellars are essential to the keeping of the food. So moving on to technological advances. So back in the old days, like 1800s, they the Utqiagvik and Inupiat people would use like canoes and harpoons to fish for whales or to grab their food. But now they use air powered spear guns, and I have a couple pictures here for you to look at. And it's definitely vastly different compared to the 1800s. They use power boats, which allows them to hunt more effectively. There's better tools for them to hunt efficiently, and unfortunately, this is where the insecurity comes in. The bowhead whale, which is one of their favorites, is actually an endangered species, and that could impact their future food security. I believe the government has put a limit on how many they can hunt. I think it's 11 per. I'm not sure if it's per year. I don't remember, but I know the government has, and the Whaling Commission has put a number on the max they are allowed to hunt. Um, so basically, to strategies to fix this would be, I mean, they could go back to their old ways of hunting. You don't necessarily have to use these cool, instruments and everything and bulldozers. They actually use bulldozers just for to get the whales out of the ocean. I mean, look how big that is. They could go back to the old ways of hunting, and it could lower or it could rise the number of whales, bowhead whales, so they are no longer endangered, which is a win-win for everybody, right? Another problem with the technological advances is, and they've overfished for the whales, is that there's excuse me, advocacy excuse me, advocacy groups, geez, that have spoken out against, whaling. My country accent gets in the way sometimes. So that's a huge concern for them, and for Utqiagvik, it it could go either way with the technological advances. I mean, it's a very modern town, but as for the tribes who have lived there, they are very much they have come a long way in how they hunt. And here we go with cost of living is a concern. As you can see, I mean, $6 for a pound of, I don't know, grapes, or no, 28.19 for grapes, and $6 for a pound of other fruit and stuff over here, because that's stuff that doesn't grow there. It's essentials that is hard to come by in that area. So rural communities, their cost of living is high. So food subsistence is culturally important to the Inupiat people and for the community of Utqiagvik. Um, they love sharing their food, and at this bottom right photo, you can see they have a community gathering where they're sharing blubber. They call it moot talk, is what they call well. It's not just blubber. It's everything. They use all parts of the well. Um, so it's very culturally important to them. Bread can cost as much as $6, depending. Same for milk, which can cost $14. Which, if you look at the grapes, that shouldn't be any surprise. Like, I wouldn't pay $30 for grapes. Um, I mean, so some people have moved away from the eating the whale, the seal, and the walrus, which has caused the increase in food. They've moved away from their roots, I guess, or that some people have. Um, and there's also a concern with employment. So the Inupiat in the region they're huge on sharing food, like I mentioned. It's part of their culture to share and open up food to those who are in need. It's an old way of tradition. It was about sharing the catch and breaking it down for everyone to use. Um, that's a huge part of that area of Alaska. All right, so now we have change in social standards. So this one is kind of, I enjoyed reading the stories for this one. They eat very high fatty foods, um, but the introduction of globalization, or I guess the spreading of globalization, has brought new federal regulations that inhibit the will of Inupiat people from eating blubber, as you can see here. That's mutok, whale blubber, and it's culturally important to them, and it's actually healthy for them to consume. There's no uh, adverse health effects for them eating the high fatty foods. There's been research done where if you or I were to eat that, it would not bode well for us, but for them, it's healthy. And eating other types of food that we probably enjoy eating, it will not be healthy for them. So them having access to that high fatty food is essential to them, and because people react differently to other cultures and how they eat, and because more people are moving into that area, it's become I guess, kind of gross in some people's eyes to eat that, but it's important to them and for their food security. uh I have a picture here of a seal. It's how they break it down and what parts of the seal they enjoy eating. um Sorry, it's kind of blurry. So the strategies for this would be to allow the consumption of blubber, right? It's a health factor for them. It's healthy for them to eat it, and it doesn't have any adverse effects on their health. And it's also a cultural significance for them. It's part of their culture. They enjoy eating it. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's if for this woman who I read about, she was in a nursing home and she was forced to eat like macaroni and cheese, green beans, and mashed potatoes, and ham, and all that other kind of stuff. But that's not what she wanted. She wanted to go back to what she would eat before when she lived in Utqiagvik, which was whales and seals, and it's what she enjoyed. So that was a sense of food insecurity for her. So identifying the gap. I have a picture here. It's a celebration. So I mean, food is seen as a celebration in this area. It's a great thing. For many Utqiagvik Inupiat people, food security is directly correlated to their culture. It's part of who they are. It's what they are. It's how they live their life. as I said, it's a celebration. It's you if they would catch a whale, they would break it down together, cook it together. Hey, Toby, sorry about the dog. He just had surgery, so he's a little in pain. So I apologize. So food is spiritually, and it will be. It's food is spiritual to them, and it will be hard to change. And it's a kind of a gap that's going to be really hard to fill, I think. Um, but I think that is my last slide. It is, and I appreciate everyone's feedback this semester, and I really enjoyed listening to everyone's presentations. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.